All right, good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to close our executive session and open our public meeting for Port of Bellingham Board of Commissioners meeting for Tuesday, February 7th, 2023. Start with roll call. Commissioner Briscoe?
Here.
Commissioner Bell? Here. And Commissioner Shepard. All three commissioners are present. I'm going to read our advisory committee meeting schedule and then we'll move into public comment. Our first advisory committee meeting schedule is the Marina Advisory Committee, or the MAC, February 14th at 6 p.m. Harbor Center building, that's this building here, and that's an in-person meeting. Our next is the Bellingham International Airport Advisory Committee, or the BIAC, that's April 13th at 4 p.m., and that is a Zoom-based meeting. Next, we'll move into public comment. I see that I had the pleasure of meeting Otis already, and I told Otis he can come back to any meeting he wants because he's adorable, and he's already sharing his comments with us. So. We'll move into public comment. What we do for public comment is we ask you to come up to the mic to share who you are, where you live, and we keep public comment to about 3 minutes. Our first person signed up is Eric Davidson.
Hi, thank you for your time. My name is Eric Davidson, and I'm on the Blaine City Council. And I met a couple of you before. Don't know you very well, but I appreciate your time to come up here. I'm here talking in support of the Drayton Harbor Oyster Marine Ecotourism update that Steve Seymour's going to give a presentation to here in a few minutes. The City of Blaine and Drayton Harbor Oyster have been working closely together, and I know that some people have been in contact with the port about this, about some projects down at the Blaine Marina. It's, to us, a pretty exciting thing. We've been working very closely with Representative Alicia Rule on this, and she's very excited about this. Something that we're excited about, and Assemblymember Rule are excited about, is what I have kind of called the 3 E's, which is economy, ecotourism, and education. And she says Olympia just loves that kind of thing, right? So the more Olympia can support us up here, whether it be through City of Blaine or through the Port of Bellingham, I think it's a wonderful thing. And the folks at Drayton Harbor have been really great and really good stewards of the city and good stewards of marine life. And I think this can be a great thing for tourism. I think it could be a great thing for fisheries and our maritime industries, and good for the economy, good for environmental. It's just something we're really excited about in the City of Blaine. Part of the issue is that the date to ask Olympia or to put in through the Assembly, through Alicia Rule's office, is the drop dead date is February 17th, which is coming up. So that's 9 days. So I notice it is not on your action items. So I would hope that there would be some discussion about possibly putting it on your action items as a support to put in for the budgeting. If that's not the case, then the City of Blaine can discuss that. But we're really hoping, because I know the port's a leader in all of this, and we really look to the port for a lot of support, not just financially, but support just for the City of Blaine, and you've been great about it. I know people come and ask me for money all the time, Bobby, so I get it. But no, I just think that this is a very worthwhile thing, and the fact that Representative Rule is behind it, I think is great, and I hope you guys can give it a good, honest look. Thank you.
Mr. Davidson?
It's for Alicia Rule to make a budget request.
Yeah, just clarify the drop dead date. Is that Representative Rule's date for being able to submit funding applications?
I believe that's the last day that not just Representative Rule, but that's all the Assembly people and senators have. So, okay. Yeah.
All right. Thank you for that. Okay, next comment is Jim Kyle.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Jim Kyle, current president of the Working Waterfront Coalition, resident of Deming. I'd like to double down on Eric's testimony here. We're trying to work more closely with the city of Blaine, and we have Garth Baldwin, also a council member, is now our liaison between the Working Waterfront Coalition Board and the city council. So Drayton Harbor Oyster, as I'm sure you realize, has been a key participant in the renaissance of downtown Blaine and to some extent Blaine Harbor. And we don't know the details of this proposal. I'm sure there's some flexibility built in, but we are enthusiastic supporters of the ideas and the prospect of the educational initiative that they've come up with. And while we have both the Blaine City Council and the Port Commission in the room, I'd like to mention Jorgensen Pier and the road and the bulkheads that go out to it. But the pier has a long history, which I've mentioned to most of you before, which I've experienced for a long time. So it would be great to see that special place become once again, improved access for Blaine citizens and visitors and whoever might want to use that. So thanks for the time. That's it.
All right, thank you very much, Jim. Next I have Shoestring Circus.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for having us here. I'm Justin with the Shoestring Circus, and I've been coordinating with you guys already. And then we have other folks here from the show as well to introduce.
Hi, I'm Nicole. I'm also one of the owners for Shoestring Circus, and I handle the marketing and ticketing for us.
I'm Sadie Osterloh, live in Bellingham, also handle booking.
Hi, I'm Matthew. I do the casting and show direction.
But we're excited to collaborate with the Port and the city of Bellingham and bring our Big Top Circus tent down to the Port for 2 weekends of shows. We think it'd be an excellent collaboration to bring arts and culture and joy and fun and whimsy into downtown Bellingham. And I think it could be great for commerce, for tourism, etc. Between us, we have about 15 to 20 years experience each in the circus industry. We are all based in Bellingham, so we've been a part of the Bellingham Circus Guild, Dream Science Theater. We work also in the Pacific Northwest, like through the Moisture Festival in Seattle that's been running for decades. What else did we want to mention? Oh, right, the circus tent is amazing and beautiful, classic circus tent. These two have worked with Flynn Creek Circus for years, who we just bought they upgraded and bought a new circus tent. We bought their circus tent. So these two have been both working inside performing, putting up the tent, and doing a lot of the administrative work with Flynn Creek Circus. So we'll be performing in this tent that these two have been knowing and loving for many years. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.
I'm not going to let that go without saying we're happy to have you there. This is so Bellingham, and it is so waterfront, right? It's everything we would want on the waterfront. It is everything Bellingham expects from us as a port. So just welcome. Just know that you are welcome.
Yay!
Thank you.
Cool.
And we have a great team that really helps publicize and market events, and that waterfront is really becoming a destination for events, and so we're looking to celebrate that and going forward.
Yeah, it's going to look really beautiful if it ends up going up there. It's just,
Okay.
yeah, it's back.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Last person signed up for public comment is Mike Harmon.
Good afternoon, Commission. I wanted to just take a minute and introduce myself as we work together with the port. I'm with the City of Blaine, the new city manager, and as we talk about Jorgensen Pier and some of the other issues that you're going to visit and learn about today, I just wanted to be able to put a face with the name, and I can introduce myself to the commission, and I look forward to working with the commission. Blaine's a neat little community, and I think there's a lot of potential there, and we can work together to unlock some of that potential. So thank you for the time. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much for taking the time to come say hi. Is there anybody else in the room who would like to provide public comment? Is there anyone who has joined us on Zoom who would like to provide public comment? You can either raise your hand or unmute yourself. Okay, going once, going twice. We do have a second opportunity for public comment at the end of our regular business. All right, with that, we'll move on to our consent agenda. Carrie, if you please.
I motion to approve the consent agenda items A through C.
Thank you. Is there any questions or comments, Commissioner Briscoe?
I have none.
Commissioner Bell?
I have none.
Same here. We're an easy bunch today for our consent agenda.
All right, I motion to approve consent agenda items A through C.
All right, Commissioner Briscoe?
Yes.
And Commissioner Bell?
Yes.
And I'm a yes as well. Carries 3-0. We now get to move into our first presentation, Drayton Harbor Oyster Marine Ecotourism Update, and Elliott Smith.
We'll have you go over to the podium, Steve.
Hi, I'm Elliott Smith. I'm the real estate director here at the Port of Bellingham. Welcome to our colleagues from Blaine. Glad to have you here and meet you for the first time, some of you. I just want to quickly introduce Steve Seymour, and Noah is going to work on bringing up Steve's presentation while I'm speaking. Drayton Harbor Oyster Company makes some fantastic oysters. They are not known for their PowerPoint presentations. So I'd like you to listen gently. There are some fantastic ideas in here. There are some timelines that we may struggle with a little bit, but the ideas bringing life back to the Jorgensen Pier and some education and more activity down in the Blaine Harbor, I think are all good ones. So you have 10 minutes. I'll give you a couple-minute warning. Be enthusiastic, and then let's figure out how we can move forward a little bit.
He's rolling it right up.
All right. Well, welcome, Steve. Thanks for taking some time to come speak with us.
Elliott and I, it's been a fun relationship for the last week.
Steve, if you could start by introducing yourself for the public record.
Okay, so Drayton Harbor Oyster. I was going to talk about the place, the resource, the opportunities through the eyes of the oyster farmer. And I think maybe Ken and a few other people in this room have heard the Time to Ponder presentation. I was going to talk about the place, right? Drayton Blaine sits in the gateway to the Salish Sea. Got 2.5 million people just to the north. We share international borders, waters, issues, fisheries. I was going to give you the 10,000-foot view of the area. You know, we've got tremendous resources, 1,000 acres of certified shellfish grounds, large tracts of public beaches, county parks, commercial port infrastructure, I think looking for a renewal, commercial oyster farms. We've got a long history of treaty and non-treaty commercial fishing. We have 5 universities within half an hour. And we also have, then, probably more important than anything, a supportive community. So in a brain dump, 15, 20 minutes of me looking at an aerial, I just laid out all the things that I think make Drayton Harbor really one of the amazing places. I call this the view from the oyster scow. When you work every day on, in, or about this bay, you just get to see things that most others never do. But today, and then we were going to talk about, so in the whole process and what led to this, Alicia Rule has heard this presentation, as has some of the city council, as Ken has. We met with BTC early on. The idea of creating really a unique space that focused on education and workforce development, history, natural resources, incubator sites for possible sustainable marine aquaculture enterprises. And then it came down to like, where are we going to put it down here in the whole wharf area? And there's some amazing things, you know, real quickly, the Blaine Sewer Water Treatment Plant, state-of-the-art facility. We toured it last week. I was blown away. They produce and can produce 1.5 million gallons a day of crystal clear, sterile water that currently we have no real home for. We are using some of it to water the golf courses. I call it the unclaimed, reclaimed water dilemma. Huge resource sitting right down there on the wharf. And then Blaine back in early 1990 and again in 2015 created this wonderful concept for a resource and education center that was to be located there on that 2 or 3 acre site that was the old landfill. That kind of lost interest once we found out it'd be very difficult to build on that site. But again, move forward. Okay. So there's a number of things, right? And so today my plan was to present all this stuff in great detail and then really send you guys home with this great idea about a big plan. Elliot, Mr. Reality, you know, he said, you really got 10 minutes. And really the important thing we want to accomplish today is to try to get your support for this 2023 legislative session. Member requested local community project stuff. Yes, as Elliot pointed out, that application has to be in next week. The members vote on this stuff the following week. And so what I said to myself is, well, we better trim this down. So I focused on the Jorgensen Pier, which is one of the integral early action projects that we identified in the grand suite of things to do. And it makes good sense. It's good timing. I don't know where the port is on that whole project. I just know that we lease 2,700 square foot area off of the in pier. We would love to be able to use the in pier itself. It would give us additional room for seed setting and that type of stuff. Jorgensen Pier, we're thinking about a marine life center such as you have right over here sitting out on the end of that. Something that would be a really attractive amenity to all of that area. The pier currently, it gets used sometimes pretty strongly on a nice summer day, but really there's not a lot of use. Drayton Harbor Oyster certainly could use an approved pier that will allow us to have heavier materials out there. You know, Drayton Harbor Ecosystem Project as a launch point for doing tours of the farm, tours of the bay, tours of the estuary. The Land Trust is finishing up that whole California Creek Reserve that has kayak landing spots, a beautiful spot. And you can see kayaks, paddlers, small boats. I'd like to think that we could support a satellite of the community boating center like we have down here at Fairhaven. Talked to Ryan about that, and I mean, they touch 500-600 kids a year. And I talked to him about, gee, would you think Blaine, Drayton Harbor would be a good spot for that? And he just like, man, you know, that protected bay, you know, Bellingham Bay isn't the most suitable water for a lot of that small boat activity. So we looked at Jorgensen Pier. Why? Well, because in 2011, you guys did an assessment of those piers. You know, they need work, somewhere to the tune of about $2011, about $1 million, $1.1 million. But we have at least the assessment work done, and we have a pretty good idea of what kind of work is required. It might be timely. We hear about the road. I'm not really that privy on where that discussion is between the port and the city. I mean, some of you commissioners indicated there's more movement than maybe I know of. But at that time, you know, that the road is essential to provide both ADA access and just some parking, things of that sort. So here's the project in a nutshell. So again, marine ecotourism is what the main focus is. The rehab project, you can read this, the in-pier rehab piece, the visitor float. We'd like to have the visitor float and ramp reinstalled. I understand right now it's not practical because the sedimentation. And I think it was Elliot pointed out to me that, maybe during the time that we're revamping the road, it might be an opportunity to deepen that area a little bit. So in fact, we can reinstall the ramp and the floats. As I understand it, we still have the ramp and the floats. So, that saves us about $100,000 there. That would be the launch point or the kickoff point for the ecotourism piece, the small boat community stuff, the small sailing boats, as well as, visitor access to that particular spot of the port. The Plover could schedule stops there. It could just be a very useful thing. So for just maybe more for the audience than the commissioners, this is the 12,000-foot Jorgensen Pier, AKA In Pier. Was that?
Go back to the last slide.
Sure.
Just couldn't see that far right in.
Oh, okay. So yeah, there's the numbers.
Yeah.
These are 211 numbers, which were taken out of the report, $720,000. That's 10, 12 years ago. Would that price double? I don't know. You guys are better judges on that than me. But at least we've identified where the main issues are. And then, again, something like a float installation, we just budgeted $40,000. Marine Life Center, I know, we talked with Elliot about maybe, containers. Seems like containers are big down here. I could see a simple pole structure. I could even see something like, the dome that we have down on the plaza. I mean, just something that would provide some limited shelter. I would see this Marine Center probably being a seasonal activity, but maybe not. If it was a sound enough structure, I could see it being a wonderful place for people to go out in the wintertime and visit the dock. There would be some shelter. We also see ourselves as the oyster company if and when the In Pier would be reestablished and strong enough that maybe we would have a pop-up out there of oyster bar, offer food and drinks. That would be kind of the culmination of our eco-tour type of activity. Okay.
A couple of minutes.
Yes, sir.
Steve, take your time. You're doing fine here. I'm enjoying hearing it.
Okay.
Steve, real quick.
Yes.
Tell me about supply of oysters. Do you guys have capacity with your current facilities to scale up and provide additional product if you are getting increase in tourism?
We have a 30-acre lease in Drayton Harbor, and we're really close to having a new site, an 8-acre floating site, down in the southwestern part of the bay where the water's cleaner. And it's a floating thing. It's in 12 feet of water. And just real quick, I know the time, but I talked about community support. We went through the county shoreline permit for this 8-acre floating array. We had one letter in mild opposition. I think you all know that when you start proposing something floating aquaculture in front and shorelines, you often just are put in an impossible position with the neighborhood looking down on your thing and just really making the shoreline process very, very, very difficult. I think that's just an example, and we really outreach to the community. We ran articles in the Northern Lights and everything else. I wanted to make sure people knew what we were planning. And it's a visible thing. It's going to be floating, low profile, not obnoxious in any sense. But the fact that we had almost no opposition from the community tells me that we have an opportunity to really do some really cool things with the harbor around aquaculture. Now, I totally lost my train of thought. Okay, for the audience, 12-foot Jorgensen Pier. Historically, people could drive out there and park their cars. It was wonderful. You go out in the middle of winter and watch storms blow through and things. But with today's Puget Sound water quality stuff, it would be just really difficult, I think, to suggest that again, I think. But certainly, limited parking on the access road for ADA parking and things of that, so it would be appropriate. I would certainly, if we have a a little facility out there. It'd be nice to at least have some opportunity for a vehicle to service the site occasionally, as maybe a kayak drop-off points, things of that sort. The end pier for the public, don't want to shine this in anybody's eyes, is the end pier is this little small pier off to the right. It's about a 1,800 square foot dock. And then we lease a 2,700 square foot space from the port for our, what's called a FLEPSI. It's a floating upweller nursery facility for our oyster seed. Just some little pictures of the end pier again for those who may not be that familiar with it. It's a lovely site. I mean, I don't know if there's many places like this on the West Coast that exist. Beautiful site of the Canadian, of White Rock, and just a pretty amazing area. Here's the plan for a little Marine Life Center. I just threw in a picture of a kind of creative pole building. I think the market price on that was, the kit was like, I don't know, $15,000. This is, of course, the Marine Center here. Took my grandkids there, oh gosh, a month ago, and had to drag them away from that place, right? I mean, it's a simple, simple little place, but it just, and I thought, man, you know, Blaine, and the beauty, I talked to Casey quite a bit about that when I was out there, and, you know, they struggle with the water quality, right? She works her magic, and we talked about Blaine up here on the end pier, and there'd be no issue. That water's just crystal clear, clean, wouldn't take much pre-treatment. It'd be lovely. Just another picture of a container idea. I could see this being like the oyster pop-up concept. This is the end pier. Again, it's 1,800 square feet. And then down below on the lower left hand is our little arrangement, our FLEPSI, and a little storage shed to keep employees dry. Boating, picture of the Boating Community Center. I mean, I love that program. It just offers so many really cool things. So what's next? You know, this is kind of it. We, you know, I would love, I mean, time to ponder presentation that I'd like to do takes an hour, probably easily a couple hours. I would suggest that we try to find time in our schedules to have a work session with the port staff, city council, to sit down and just kind of revisit the wharf plan, first of all, to see what really still seems to be appropriate, and then to let me go on about all the big picture ideas. There's some awesome opportunities that exist that would look at workforce development and skill centers for high school, Marine Corps Plus programs that are starting to come forward, and just a whole bunch of stuff, and different aquaculture opportunities. And I was thinking this morning, I mean, there's no reason not to pull the Lummi tribe into it. They've got an 800-acre sea pond that they don't have a lot of use for, but in a technology world, there may be all kinds of opportunities to blend those kind of facilities. When you look at Whatcom County, we're blessed with all of this tidelands that are really cool and maybe offer some really awesome opportunities. So today, probably the issue that's really kind of probably hard is this local community project grant application for the Jorgensen Pier. I mean, as Elliot pointed out, that application has to be submitted by the 17th. I've looked at it, I've got copies of it. It's a fairly straightforward, most of it's check the box. There's a few places where you have to be creative and do a little writing, but trust us, the Drayton Harbor Oyster Company, our biologist, Catherine, I mean, she's put hundreds of hours, as I have, into this whole thought process about what this is and how the Jorgensen Pier fits into an early action for that program. So we could more than easily supply the narrative piece. The budget, I think, is fairly straightforward. So first of all, you know, would the port support the project? I'm going to assume that the port would support Jorgensen Pier improvements. Question is, would they also then submit an application that would provide some funding to help with that project in the timeline that we need it? If not, would the port support a Blaine application? I think that's kind of the two questions if I get it right. Yes.
Can you go back to the numbers, if you would? The slide with the numbers on? Back to the slide with the numbers?
Yes, sir. How do I go back? Here?
There you go. So you're asking for the port to apply for the $724,000?
No, the 1.245 million.
The full 1.24? Okay.
That's the project. They would support, for capital programs, they support any infrastructure. And this is all infrastructure. The Marine Center, I would see the operations of that would be funded, could be funded by the port. I haven't talked to Casey directly about it, but conceivably maybe she could split her time between the two, and then we could fill in with AmeriCorps type programs and things of that sort. We have the vision of forming a nonprofit that would maybe take on that like this project here was initially. I think I'm pretty confident there's a number of folks in Blaine that would really support that kind of thing and be more than happy to serve on a board. But this is capital money. And I don't know. I mean, again, this is where it gets out of my realm as far as.
So the 724, that 724,000, that doesn't fix the road. That just fixes the pier, correct?
That's 2011 numbers.
Right.
Yep.
So, okay.
Yep, that's 2011 numbers.
So we're
it's
easily 2
probably
million.
1 point.
We're easily 2 million into this.
So the pier alone is going to be, $1 million, $1.5 million, and that doesn't address the road, which is another $1 million. So we're $2.5 million to get that pier going. I don't think, my strategy, clearly a commissioner's call, but I wouldn't go asking for $1.245 million from Alicia. I'd pick something a smaller amount that we could get done. We're already going to do the pier. We're counting on the city to do the road. So if we can pick off something smaller on this, and maybe it's the ecotourism piece or the visitor float and ramp and the Marine Life Center for a much smaller number where you're there at 110,000 instead of $1.2 million, I think you're going to have much higher odds of success. Yeah. Because we go to Lisa Rule with it, she still has to get all her peers on board with it. And when you ask too much, it gets wiped out during the process. The process is months long as they all debate it and exchange and horse trade for their projects.
Yeah, and basically, and it won't be 110, it'll probably be more like 250, and
Yeah.
and that's essentially one of those that they just say that's a throwaway, we'll give it to them, right?
That would be my strategy.
As opposed to a couple million, now you're competing with
Correct.
you're competing with Yakima.
Correct.
It was my understanding that the individual representatives kind of top out around $1 million for what they can request, and so if amongst each. Yeah, and so if this is a project that is going to be upwards of 2, it could put us in a little bit of an awkward situation of Alicia having money for a project, but we haven't necessarily gone through the city and port doing all of our budgeting to make sure the project is ready to be funded to make it whole.
Yeah.
And so I will open it up to comments, but I just wanted to start with, really appreciating all the work you and your team have done in Blaine.
Yep.
The work of revitalizing the downtown, making sure we got clean water up there in the bay. All that's really important work. And I love the direction this is going. Blaine's a perfect opportunity for this. It really is. It's just begging for this type of agritourism to happen, and I think it really would be successful. I'll open it up to my peers for a little bit of other questions and comments. Do you want to start us off, Commissioner Briscoe?
Steve, could you back up to the pictures?
And
the overhead
I have to
picture?
apologize. I have really lousy hearing, so.
Can you back up to the pictures, the overlook of the pier?
Yes. That one?
Yeah, I think you had one with even a little, well, no, that'll work, that's fine. So, where your stuff is on the water floating next to that, is that part of your lease too?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we leased just the water because the end pier was,
And where are you talking about the Marine Center, the Marine Life type thing? That'd be right next to that?
No, the Marine Center is on Jorgensen Pier itself. I thought I had a little sketch.
Right, but I mean, is it close to that, your lease parcels?
Well, I mean, it's, that's yet to be determined. It can be anywhere on that. Is that what you're asking? Where would you put the Marine Center?
Yeah.
Yeah, it would be on Jorgensen Pier somewhere where we decided is the best spot. Yeah, and I'm thinking about an 600, 800 square foot building. This over here is about 600 square feet.
Yeah, so the reason I'm asking is I think we've had studies of the pier done. They've looked at it, right? And do we have areas that we're not going to have to repair so much, or?
I'd have to dig that out because it is an old study, but I believe certain areas of the pier were stronger than others, yeah.
I'm just wondering if there's some place we don't have to do a lot of work to the pier to get this off the ground. And if so, how much money does it take to do that? And we can ask for the, I mean, I understand, and we're not saying no, at least I'm not saying no, I can't speak for anybody else in any of this, but we do have to work with that piece of pie at Olympia, and it's gonna get trimmed down. You're not gonna get all the money, so what's gonna be the most advantageous amount of money to ask for what you wanna do here? And it seems to me that if everybody wants a Marine Life Center there, and I know this is highly regarded here, it's like over the top from people have been telling me, that seems to me to be the best thing to get interest in that down there and once you put that seed there and get people interested, you're probably going to be able to get more grant money and help beyond what the port could do and the city can do. So you're going to plant the seed. So is that the best seed to plant? The first one is the Marine Life Center if we've got a piece of that pier.
Yeah, you know, as I in the last month I've been working on the bigger picture. I think we could produce a really just amazing document that outlines a future. And I would have a tough time believing we couldn't find both government money and private money to support something like that. You know, something like a Gates Foundation request. I mean, this thing has enough potential to really reinvigorate the whole wharf, which is an integral part of the downtown. I mean, it's just, and again, with the push towards workforce development, the marine trades and all of that, I mean, and on that slide that was just full of all the ideas, within that is probably 20 research questions that deal with all urbanizing basins and water quality. I mean, you know, stormwater issues around shellfish and bays and freshwater lakes. I mean, there's opportunities to do just a ton of research. The fact that we got that water reclamation plant, I mean, that is so state of the art that alone is a tourist opportunity. Think about using that water to raise salmon. And there's all kinds of really interesting little twists. And you know, the city spent $30 million on that plant, and that could be a huge showcase for a sustainable resource center, right? I mean, you start with your sewage. I mean, it's just perfect. And you're raising a sustainable animal, shellfish or something. I mean, it's just, there's so many magic little nuggets in this that, and then every time Anna Booker, we talked the other day at you know, she's this land-based learning instructor at Whatcom Community College, and we got chatting, and she says, I mean, it just fits perfect into all this stuff. We're trying to bring the community. Our motive here is, you know, the thing that makes me pause when I think about my business is the water quality. And you know, Jeff Menzies and the partnership worked so hard to get that bay turned around, and we're constantly looking at where, you know, things are going sideways. And what we see is an opportunity to really engage with the community on this whole area, so everybody has a snippet of the same love of that bay as we do. And you know, when you love something, you tend to protect it, and that's our motivation, is get the community engaged. You know, folks from outside the area are moving in, right? And they may or may not have a connection with that bay. And I think it's up to us to build that opportunity for connection. And you know, that exists everywhere. The city's resource education center, a beautiful idea. And it would draw people off the highway every day of the year to go visit that if it was done right. You could twist in the whole Native American culture piece. You know, there was a long history out there. And I just think there's amazing opportunities. And I don't see any problem finding money to support this once we have the plan. I was really reluctant to submit anything to you guys because we really don't have that plan well cooked. It's kind of how I went with this, because I said, well, this is cooked. We've got an assessment. It's an early action item. We can do this. It ties in well with the road, you know, and Alicia, when she heard the, you know, she was encouraging us to apply for lots of money, you know, $20, $30 million. And I go, you know, and so I don't know. You guys know more about the Olympia scene than me. I mean, Alicia has to sell this, and it might be a missed opportunity if we don't submit something. I don't know. I leave that's up between you and the city. I'm just here to kind of like share my vision.
What's your suggestion? I'll finish up here. What's your suggestion to start with? I was trying to find something that I thought Alicia could probably get to fly, and it was in a monetary amount that she could get her hands on. You can ask for the moon, but you might only get to the top of the hill.
I totally get it. Yeah.
So it's not that I'm trying to downplay any of this. I'm just trying
I know
to.
that. I know
the
that.
reality is, what do we think we can really get?
Yeah.
And I don't know how much money really is available.
It might need a little bit more conversation of us to have with Representative Rule to ask some of those questions. You know, I wonder, you know, this study's been around since 2011. How necessary are these improvements if we haven't done them yet? Are they critical? Can we still do this project without doing those improvements at this point, or is this something we should really wrap in?
I think when the studies were done at the dock, I think we were talking about what it used to do, support the weight of the vehicles, and 15, 20, 30 cars parked out there and people.
Yeah.
I don't know what kind of, at this point in time, what kind of weights we're talking about.
The dock's not going to fall down in any time soon. The report indicates that pretty much all of the supporting pilings are in good shape. A lot of it's fender piles, which, you know, are the bumpers for the boats, and then there are some cap piles that are starting to deteriorate. But my sense is, and we're out there every day, I mean, that in-pier concrete pier is probably, I think, one of the better piers in the harbor, personally. But that's your guys' call. I'm just here to share what I think, and whether or not it's even reasonable to expect anybody to turn an application around in a week, I have no idea. I mean, again, I think it's a fairly easy application, but I can't judge that from the port's perspective. And would it go anywhere? I don't know. And to me, you know, between Catherine and me, we've spent at least easily 100 hours, but I don't regret any of it, because it has really helped both of us focus on things, and it's made connections with people that we never made before. And I think it's just taken this thing even further than. So this has been a really good exercise, and whether or not we go after this money or not, it's not up to me.
Okay.
If I can make a suggestion here, this is all coming pretty last minute here, but I think there is some merit in applying for something just to get our foot in the door and send a message to Olympia that this is something we're going to be pursuing further in the future. If you would like, staff and I can run this down with the new city manager and Blaine and come up with a strategy on what we're going to apply for this year. Talk to Alicia Rule and run it by her and get her buy-in on what we're going to apply this year. We'll come back and report to you what we did apply for. I can't accept grants, only you can, but I certainly can apply for them. So if you want to just give me that discretion, then we'll, staff and I will run with it and come up with something and get our, like I said, get our foot in the door with Olympia, get some momentum going on these things, have discussions with the city on who's going to repair the road and when, and how we're going to get the bulkheads repaired so the road doesn't fall in again.
Well, the fact that we're all talking about repairing that road and getting the access, finally get the public access out there is a win, no matter else what happens. The fact that we've had this conversation and we've got a good pathway, it's been a priority for us for quite a while, and I'm really pleased that our partners from Blaine are here and share that priority. So that's a win in itself. I think it's a good suggestion from our executive director. I want to give Commissioner Bell a chance next.
Thank you. Wasn't sure I was going to get one. So first and foremost, there is a combination of private-public dollars, and quite frankly, there's a number of things you can do creatively. Naming rights, you can have the Bill Gates Marine Center, right? Or you could go and get the Samson Rope, pavilion. Those are the kind of things that I think from private dollar standpoint would really benefit. And you've got a growth pattern in Blaine like it's unbelievable. So if we could sit down and figure out what's best in the public sector, what's best in the private sector, because there are some private dollars available for that, I think we should strategically figure out which sectors belong where and maximize the dollar amount that we bring in, because I think it's a great vision. The second thing is I was down at Taylor, sorry, this weekend, and it was just pouring buckets, but the place was packed.
Yeah.
Right. So the demand is there. The tourism dollar is there. The novelty of this would be just off the chart. And secondly, we know how to do marine centers. Right. So all of those combined make this a great vision. The last thing I wanted to say is, you guys are at the table. We've been trying to do the road for a while, and we just hope that you're serious. Let's sit down and talk about that road, because we want to do our part, but we want to make sure that we've got a willing partner in Blaine. It has been something I've got little 10-foot pole marks on my chest from being poked, right? It's time for that to stop, and let's figure out what we can do with the city of Blaine to make sure that that happens, because that's been a barrier, quite frankly. And it is also of high importance for us, because we do operate companies out there, and we want to make sure that they're successful. So the marine trades is as important to us, just to the east of that, as it is all the way down to the pier. High priority from our standpoint to make sure something like this happens. But I've always said that this area of the country should be known for its ecotourism and its oysters. So this isn't the first time you've heard that.
I know.
And if we do this well, people will fly into BLI. So it benefits the port, because now we're bringing tourism in through all of those roads. People are coming down from Vancouver. It'll be a destination place for just that. So that's my sales pitch, and I'm done with that. Thank you.
Rob, do you need any formal motion from us, or do you have enough
I'm good.
to go with?
No, I'm good. We'll meet with Cindy, and we'll get our team together, figure out who's going to advance this, and talk to Alicia and some of the other delegates as well, just to see what they're thinking.
All right. We can get this done before the drop dead date, you think?
Certainly.
Yeah. And then as long as we can get have you guys come back and give us some ideas about some short-term and some long-term opportunities here. I want to make sure we keep having this conversation. And I think it's a really productive one for us to pour some time into.
Again, Michael, I would, in fact, Drayton Harbor Oyster would be willing to host a work session to allow me to really get going, because there's some stuff going on around the country. There's a operation in Hawaii that would just knock your socks off. It's an 870-acre aquaculture park that's just all about startup. Yeah, I don't see 870 acres. But then last night I thought, well, wait a minute. Drayton Harbor, the water, this is all land base. Well, up here we've got thousands of acres of tidelands that are currently, Drayton Harbor alone is 800 acres. And then you got all that area outside on Semiahmoo Bay, and I keep thinking kelp, you hear kelp, kelp, kelp. And I think, man, that water off of Semiahmoo Bay, I know there's a crab conflict, but maybe there's areas out there, in fact, we talked about that, there may be areas out there where it's not a crab conflict. And you don't have, freighters running up and down, and you don't have a lot of, fancy homes. And there might be a huge opportunity out in Semiahmoo Bay. Boundary Bay's been closed since, as I said, the 1960s, the shellfish harvest. The Native American tribe up the Semiahmoo Band is just dear to have that reopened. There's thousands of acres up there of tidelands that.
Okay, so if we let you keep going, next thing you know, we're going to own all of that land at some point. So we've got our direction.
Anyway,
but
it's cool.
Thank you.
Guys.
Yeah, you're a visionary. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Steve. Appreciate it.
And thank you guys.
Okay, our next presentation is EOY Financial Update, End of Year Financial Update. Tamara subject.
Oh, it's joke time.
I hope so.
It's conditioned. We're like Pavlov's dog.
You guys see that the current administration's finally done something about inflation?
Thank you.
They shot the balloon down.
You got to top that.
What?
If you can't beat it, don't try.
I can't. It's really good. All right, so I'll just go into my dry presentation, I guess. Tamara Sobczak, CFO, Port of Bellingham. So I've got the financial results for quarter 4, 2022, but my presentation tonight is 3 sections. The first one is the miscellaneous updates, then financial update, and then at the end, a special surprise, some highlights from 2022. So look forward to that. So we'll start with stormwater program. All training and record keeping are in compliance. The airport results were within permit limits. We had a little bit of an issue at the shipping terminal. At 4 sample locations, there were 10 total exceedances, including copper, zinc, and turbidity, which is the clarity. Required responses have been completed, but the Department of Ecology inspected the facility on November 2nd, and staff is working with them to address items in the inspection. So here I am just the messenger. If you have specific questions, I know Elise is on Zoom to answer anything you might have about this.
I do. And Elise, when were those samples taken?
I'm expecting these all coincide with the increased activity and storage.
That's where I'm going with that, yeah.
Yes, and the first fall storm happened later in the year, so we had all that sediment it was just a perfect storm.
And I just want to also make sure that we're not, because we have piles of metal sitting up there, we're not bringing copper and zinc in from upstream.
Yeah, I don't see myself on the video here, but this is Elise Cords, environmental specialist. Can you hear me?
Yes.
We have an image of you in our head.
Good, that's great. Okay, so the question, you asked which day the samples were taken?
Correct. Or just time frame.
Those were samples from the entire 4th quarter. So that was numerous sampling events over the quarter.
Okay.
Okay, thanks, Elise.
You're welcome.
Moving to public records requests, we had 138 in 2022. A couple things to note about that. It's right in line with what we've done in the past, or we've been done to in the past. But staff hours in 2022 were pretty high, 519 hours to fulfill those requests. We had some really large requests, and so that's why. The other thing to note is we had one major request closed for inactivity. So we uploaded those documents they asked for. They didn't download them or respond to email. So we just closed that request.
Can you put a name to that request?
It's a data gathering organization.
So one of the things we were pitching in Olympia last week was public records reform. There is a bill being introduced by the House that will take some of the weaponization of the Public Records Act out. It'll still allow records requests and believe it'll allow the transparency that's needed, but it'll take away this used as either a source of income for folks, because there's people out there just making a living off of doing records requests and then suing when they don't get them. And then it takes away the weaponization, which we've seen some of these 138 be someone didn't get their way with the port deal, and so they asked for every email ever in existence just to cause us problems. And this legislation will help solve that.
Great. But right now we can't say no. Moving to the safety reports, we had 6 injuries/illnesses in 2022. That's pretty high by our standards, but if we look at a 10-year average, that's 3 on average. Thing to note here, Blaine has been accident-free since at least 2010. They are START certified, which is a program through LNI. So shout out to them. So we'll move into the financial portion of it, and the purpose of this financial section is to report any deviations from the budget. That's really the whole purpose. So looking at port-wide revenues, we came in at almost 30 million to a budget of 26 million. Well, let me stop. The blue columns are actual results. The orange columns are what we budgeted, and then the gray is what the result was in 2021, so a year prior. So we came in higher than budgeted, expected on revenues, lower than expected on expenses port-wide, leaving us with $7 million net operating income where we had planned and budgeted $3 million. So positive results there. So we'll dig into the divisions. Aviation, I like starting with this one when it looks good. So $7 million in revenues to a budget of $4 million. This does not include those CARES funds that the FAA gave us. So this is operations only. And it's really almost every line item was better than budget. Parking, concessions, landing fees. Also the general aviation section was higher than budgeted. So really just a busier airport all over. Expenses are a little higher, again, just a busier airport. And also, don't forget about that big storm we had in December where there was ice everywhere and de-icer is very expensive. The marinas, a little higher than budget on revenues, but under in expenses. Those revenues were higher in the recreational moorage categories, and Blaine showed a little more increase than Squalicum. So that's that small increase there. Cruise terminal revenues and expenses right where we planned, so no deviations to report here. I mean, they are right on schedule. The shipping terminal, so while it looks like revenues are lower than budget, we budgeted way high in 2022. We thought we would move a little bit more cargo across the dock than we did, but still we far exceeded the prior year, so that's also still good news. And expenses were a little higher than budget, but what I'm seeing across the board is, utilities, just things like that we can't really affect much. The real estate, again, just like the cruise terminal, no deviations from budget, so they're tracking right as planned. And the overhead, this is a little bit of a tricky one to explain. So these are our, facilities and admin costs and executive. The expenses are higher than normal because our maintenance department charges for their work. So say Andy in Blaine needs some maintenance work done. So he puts in a service call, maintenance comes out, does the work, and they charge the marinas for that. So this chart shows more expenses, but really it's less charge outs. So we used the maintenance department less hours than we had budgeted for. I mean, they were still busy, of course, but this isn't money out the door. It's less interfund transfer, if that makes sense. Moving to the waterfront, again, revenues and expenses right at budget. Nothing really to say about this one, right as planned. And then all other public, there's kind of a good news story here. The revenues, while it's a small number down there, it's more than 10% exceeding the budget for revenues. And that's meetings and events. They had in 2022 their highest, busiest year to date. So if they seemed busy, they were. And then the expenses were below budget. Now this all other public encompasses all the community connections, infrastructure, economic development. So small decreases in expenses add up, but it's not one big thing that accounted for that. So all of that flowing to our balance sheet, again, good news. I love this. In 2021, we had assets of $410 million. A year later, we had $425 million. Liabilities went down as we paid those things off. And then our net assets, which is kind of the net worth, went from $268 million to $285 million. And then just a couple other little things here. We had $12.5 million in these federal securities. Average yield on investments, 2.3. If you recall, last time I reported this, it was much lower. So I've been able to purchase a couple of investments at higher yields to bump that average a little bit. LGIP balance, 56.8. Net earnings rate over 4%. And finally, for this section, the CARES relief for airports, we received $3.5 million, and there's almost $1 million left to receive in 2023. And these are for payroll and utilities and parking fees and things like that. Again, not included in that $7 million figure I mentioned earlier. And then in 2022, we spent almost $18 million in capital projects, and that's about the same level as 2021. So it looks like we're ramping back up from the decline in the previous couple of years. So for the fun part, if there's no questions about those, okay. So the fun part of this, so in our 2022 budget, we identified 7 key corporate goals. So I wanted to highlight just a few things from each one of those. So in no particular order, one of our goals was employee retention. We launched an employee engagement survey and identified areas of strengths and growth opportunities based on employee feedback. We began to work on opportunities such as diversity, equity, inclusion, performance management, professional growth, communication, things like that. One thing I wanted to mention, that survey, so it was questions, you answered, you agree, disagree, whatever, and we gave points for those. The top 3 positive questions, top scoring questions was, I enjoy the people I work with. That was number 1. I find my work engaging, number 2, and I am proud to work here. So that's what our employees told us.
And they're working with the same people we're working with?
I don't, it's math. I don't make this up.
Ouch.
Professional development and tuition assistance policy was reintroduced. We had it already, but we discovered that employees didn't really know about it or remember about it, so we just reintroduced it and brought it back up.
And since that was reintroduced, I've signed more applications for this reimbursement than I have in my whole career here in just a short period of time. So people have learned about it, they're taking advantage of it, and they're getting education yeah, it's nice.
And the employee committee was restructured to encourage more participation. Planning for 2023 events is already well underway. And these 2 photos here, that's from the Bellingham Bells game. And then the one on the right is our chili cook-off in the pavilion last October. Another key goal was marine trades expansion. Corvus Energy came to town. As you know, they're a world market leader in marine batteries. Their goal was to create 15 jobs within the year and up to 40 over the next 3 years. And we coordinated a Marine Trades Expo to help connect employers to those interested in marine trade work. And then we retained Beard On USA and Fairhaven. They were looking to leave because they needed more capacity. We were able to increase that capacity, and that led to the creation of new jobs from 10 to 15 up to 40 now. And then the next goal is redevelopment of the shipping terminal and log pond. As you are well aware, we signed a long-term lease with ABC Recycling. I believe that's a 15-year lease with a 10-year option, so they're here long-term. They expanded their business into the Whatcom County and hired 7 full-time employees, and that doesn't even count the number of jobs like the trucking jobs and things like that relate to that. J.E. McAmis, moving large rocks to barge to the Columbia River Jetty project, used our shipping terminal. And the ILW Longshore increased full-time employees. The number grew to 18 full-time permanent jobs in Bellingham, so no longer having to travel. The next goal is the strategic management of the airports. Employments are at almost pre-pandemic levels, so you can see this chart. In 2022, we almost reached 2019, and we fully expect to smash that record in 2023, especially with the Southwest announcing expanding service to Denver. So as you know, that east-west connection's been really important.
Does the guy down the table have something to do with it?
You want me to pause on this, Commissioner Bell?
Yes, but
soak that in.
I had to travel when they were down a little bit, so this worked out just about as well as that quarterback trade you gave us.
Good, good, good. And then finally, the key safety projects at the airport, Taxi Lane Kilo, $4.4 million, 100% FAA funded. Taxi Lane Foxtrot, which is the one in the picture here, they straightened that out. $4.4 million, 90% FAA funded. And then the runway safety area, of course, $2 million, 100% FAA funded. So fantastic work there. So economic development and job creation, I know I've already talked about some jobs earlier, but this needs its own slide. Vicinity Motor Corporation, as you know, invested $22 million in the Ferndale community to bring 22 living wage jobs. We helped them get there. The broadband projects began and we secured significant grants to fund the projects. We assisted, I hope I don't butcher this, Kennacher Kitchen to locate to Linden. Construction is underway for a 220,000 square foot facility. They anticipate completion in 2024 and adding living wage jobs at that time. And I believe they produce
What do they do?
freeze-dried pet food, I believe. If I'm wrong, apologize to them. And then, of course, the purchase of the industrial property to be completed this month, adding leasable space to the port's portfolio. Environmental cleanup, I promise we are getting through this. Environmental cleanup. The Lignan site, I have some fun facts about this one. So 3-acre cleanup site is complete, and that allowed for the sale of property to Mercy Housing. So the fun facts about this one is, so the cleanup removed and recycled over 6,000 tons of concrete and asphalt, removed and disposed of 12,000 tons of contaminated soil, and imported over 28,000 tons of clean fill. So I thought that was pretty impressive on a little 3-acre site. Department of Ecology funding, we received over $4 million in 2022, and it's estimated that each dollar of MACA funding returned $6 in local tax revenue, $7 in payroll revenue, and $32 in business revenue. So those are important dollars as well.
And I'll just brag for the team about the Lignan site being 100% funded by Department of Ecology.
Yes, thank you.
Which is a big deal. We don't always get that.
Yeah. And then one more, I couldn't not do this one because I know Commissioner Shepherd loves this one. Little Squalicum Beach, $1.5 million, again, 100% funded. And finally, the waterfront redevelopment. The Board Mill building, successful RFP of the Board Mill site, currently in negotiations on an option agreement, as you're well aware. Container Village expansion, in 2022, we had 4 permanent tenants and 1 with the rotating tenants. And there are big plans. I sit right in earshot of Carrie, and there are big plans for expanding in 2023. And I could not.
There's actually 5 permanent tenants.
Okay, 5 with permanent tenants and 1 with rotating. Thanks.
He's just bolstering your numbers, it's okay.
Yeah, it's great. And I could not finish this without mentioning the pump track. So Northwest Tune-Up really brought people to the site. As you can see, that first picture, it's a crowd. And then the addition of the racetrack to the pump track just really shows how fluid and flexible that pump track can be.
Well, and that space.
Yeah.
You're going to see that kind of turnout, I think, for the circus as well. It'll be packed.
That'll be fun. So that's it for my presentation. Any questions or comments?
Well, I'd just like to say that we have a very, very good staff here. And I don't know how you say it any better than that, but when I came here as a commissioner, one of the goals that I wanted to achieve, and today achieves it, we are doing more than the port has done in many, many years. And we are doing it on the positive side of things. Everything we do has been positive, and it shows in the numbers, the jobs created. We're doing what we're mandated to do by Olympia, and that's make our economy healthy and keep things going. And our staff, it's not because of us, it's because of our staff and our executive director. And thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Bell?
Yeah, they get all this done and they like each other, as we have found. So, yeah, great.
Yeah. This was nice. A nice way to recap some highlights. I'd love to continue that into future years.
Great, I'll do that.
Yeah, it's a really nice summary of, so many diverse areas that we are working and our team is engaged in, and it's a huge impact in the community. So thanks for sharing.
You're welcome.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? I think that ends our presentations. Next, we have action items. We're going to take a 5-minute recess before we do that, and we'll be back after 5 minutes. Okay, we're going to resume. We have one and only action item for the day. Turn this over to Tiffany for a presentation.
Does Carrie need? No, you don't need. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Motion approving Resolution 1354H to adopt the Harbor Rules, Regulations, Rates Handbook applying to Squalicum Harbor, Blaine Harbor, and the Bellingham Cruise Terminal.
Thank you. Tiffany D. Simone, Director of Marinas, back in front of you with rules and regulations after the presentation at the last commission meeting. So you may recall, I mentioned at the last meeting, we've been in front of the MAC committee twice with these, and then did the presentation last week and received some feedback from commission then. So let me just start the presentation again with the same identifiers, which is the red text is the new policy and the green strikeout language is deleted language. This is a list of the items that I went through last time that I didn't receive comment on from you. So I just wanted to get up there in front of you. If you do have questions, Pam is here to answer them. And then I'll go over the slides, the policy numbers that you did have feedback for. Maybe, there we go. So this was, we heard you say, make an offer and then move the list along. So we changed that to reflect that feedback that we received from you last year, or last meeting.
Seemed like a year ago.
Kinda. We had proposed this section and heard feedback that we needed to refine that a little bit in definition so as not to impede marine trade work and make sure that we're applying it with what the intent is, which is not storing boats on trailers. And so what we thought we would do this time is remove it from this one and come back with you later with an amendment with more clear language. That's it.
Really?
Okay.
That's it.
My favorite type of presentation, short and to the point.
I've covered it in several meetings now, so.
Okay, any questions or comments? Commissioner Bell? Commissioner Briscoe?
No, I'm glad that you're going to come back with an amendment with clarity so that we're doing what we need to do. Thank you.
Thank you for the feedback.
Okay, that's it. I don't have any either. Carrie?
All right. Motion approving Resolution 1354H to adopt the Harbor Rules, Regulations, and Rates Handbook applying to Squalicum Harbor, Blaine Harbor, and the Bellingham Cruise Terminal.
Okay, Commissioner Bell?
Yes.
Commissioner Briscoe?
Yes.
And Commissioner Shepard is also yes. Carries 3-0. All right, that ends our regular business. I'm going to move into our end of meeting public comment. Anyone in the room wish to provide public comment at this time? Not seeing anyone jump up. Any of our friends on Zoom wish to provide public comment? You can make yourself known by raising your hand or just unmuting yourself.
We can't see.
And we can't see you, so. Oh, Carrie can. It doesn't sound like there's anyone trying to jump up and speak from Zoom.
Yep, there is one.
Oh, okay.
One hand raised.
Great.
But before I get into it, I have gently asked Steve if I can make a comment. My name is Catherine
Yes,
Guerra.
go ahead.
I'm the...
Oh, yeah, I was just saying to go ahead and thank you for introducing yourself.
My name is Catherine Guerra, and I am a community outreach biologist with Drayton Harbor Oyster Company. I've been in and about Blaine for about 5 years now and working with Drayton Harbor for about 3. I've worked extensively on developing a more detailed proposal and budget outline that I don't think is going to be presented. I'm not actually sure where that's sitting right now, but just to state that Steve and I have worked sort of extensively on building this vision, fine-tuning it, sort of figuring out how it fits. Earlier in the conversation, while Steve was presenting, I believe one of the commissioners had mentioned that, or maybe Steve had mentioned, I think it might have been Steve, that the vision, the plan for the that large visionary marine resource industry separate from the Marine Life Center. That sort of like all-inclusive, all-encompassing visionary project, that there wasn't a thorough or clear plan for that. That was a capital project that we had sort of tossed around at a super high level because we all think it's a really cool idea, and we all know that we don't have the details to put that plan into action. But with the capital budget process, planning and feasibility dollars are available for capital projects that can be proposed in a future budgetary year. So this is a biennial budget. And if we were to receive planning and feasibility and partnership building dollars in this allocation, I think the dollars are distributed around July, that would provide 2 years of funds and time whereby we could actually develop something that was clear and possibly able to get off the ground or take one step forward. But that was a thought that we had, was maybe we could see this a little farther down the road, not make any decisions, but at least begin the information gathering process, begin the collaborative process with all of the community members and partners that are interested and affiliated in an important part of this greater vision. So I don't know if Steve wants to speak any further to that, or Elliot. It hadn't been mentioned, and I think it's an important thing to understand that these dollars could get us where we may all want to be 10 years down the road.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you for sharing that. And I think our team here is going to look forward to being engaged with both your organization and the City of Blaine to get the best possible option for this year, and then to think about some long-term options as well. Thanks again. Anyone else wish to provide comment from Zoom? Okay. That moves us into other business. I'm going to start us off with Jim Kyle. If you would be willing to come up. Mr. Kyle had provided a question from the Working Waterfront for us to engage in some conversation around residential use at the harbor. If you wanted to come up to the podium, introduce yourself, and frame the question for us. I do.
You can read it off the phone.
Or we could read it.
Or I could read it for you. Would you like me to read it, Jim?
Would you like Carrie to read it for us?
I'm fine to read it, I just didn't know if I was
Okay.
going to, but.
Okay.
So first, Commissioners, thank you for trying this kind of a new idea about just bringing a question to you and just basically listening to you discuss it. We don't necessarily have to participate. I'm a little surprised to be participating to this extent, but I can read the question if I can figure out how to make this work. Oh, it's working. Yeah, I understand a little bit. So the question, we agree with prior commission discussions that the approval of additional residential units near Squalicum or Blaine harbors would be harmful to the long-term vitality of our working waterfronts. These prior decisions have been made on a case-by-case basis. Why revisit this issue over and over again? This could be prevented by a new policy added to the comprehensive scheme of harbor improvements that would reject additional residential units on land and/or buildings that are classified either water reliant or maritime contributing. There may be parcels that lack these designations that also deserve this protection, such as Point Roberts Press and the Camway buildings in Blaine. Isn't it time to consider such a policy?
Okay. Thank you very much. And for the backstory, the Working Waterfront Coalition had engaged the commission for some ideas about digging into some issues of concern. There was a suggestion to facilitate that process through the other business time, and this was the first question that came to us from the crew. So I'll open it up. Commissioner Briscoe, do you want to start us off?
I think I'd like to defer to our executive director for a comment before I start discussing this on the do's and don'ts.
So I understand what the Working Waterfront Coalition is trying to do, and I think this commission's been pretty adamant that marine trades lands are sacred and we're going to protect them, and that we're not going to gentrify those areas. We have certain areas of the port that we are gentrifying, and those are necessary for both the expansions of our community and also to pay some of the bills. I always like to say the port bought the GP land to clean it up and has to sell some of those lands to pay for the cleanup. So I think there's a good strategy in allowing some residential around, and I understand what they're trying to do to protect the marine trades. However, I don't think making a change to the scheme of harbor improvements or adopting this policy does that, because if you ever got a commission that wanted to build residential in those areas, all they have to do is undo what you did. You can't bind future commissions that way. They just take a vote to say, okay, now we're going to allow residential and we're going to change the comprehensive scheme of harbor improvements. So you're taking some flexibility away from your own decision making, and you're not accomplishing anything by limiting anyone from the future. Again, this commission's been very adamant about protecting marine trades, and I expect that'll continue. And I also suspect that you're going to have a hard time getting elected to be a port commissioner in Whatcom County unless you're going to protect the marine trades lands, because it is such a growing and thriving industry. I just don't know what this would accomplish.
Thank you, Rob. Maybe some people don't know, but the Port Commission is pretty powerful when three of you get together and decide you want to do something. And as our executive director said, we can go ahead and make a resolution, pass rules, but in the near future, when another commission's in power, they can undo everything. A commission can undo any lease with any tenant at any time. There's a cost for that. But so the things we do, we hope are sound enough to carry us into the future for other commissions to make wise decisions and be able to look back at what we've done and understand what this commission has done and why we've done it. So I don't think we can do any more than we've done at this point and what we've done in the past by not putting residential in a working waterfront area. We've tried not to do that. We can make a resolution, we can pass a rule between the three of us, but that can be undone very simply, which is in some respects unfortunate, and in other respects, hindsight's always 20/20. Maybe 20 years down the road, the whole world's changed and something different comes along and it has to be done differently. So I hope that people are comfortable with this commission's decisions in what we've done with our waterfront and our working waterfront to preserve it and enhance it. And I think this commissioner wants to stay that course. However, commissions in the future, if they decide to change course, that's their prerogative and they can undo the things that we were to do. I think it'd be probably better done in the public arena with associations such as yourself, Jim, with the Working Waterfront Coalition and other groups like that have the political ear, so to speak, that can bring public awareness and public pressure to bear that those things aren't done. I certainly have no inclination to do anything different than we have done, but once again, I think it's going to be up to the commission at hand. So that's what I have to say in response to that question.
Yeah. Anything to add, Commissioner Bell?
Yeah, I'm just, I think you two know that I have trouble binding future commissions, even to leases, right, for long-term leases. So binding a future commission to something like this would be difficult. And quite frankly, it's a political choice. At some point, I'm going to look to you guys, you're going to have to raise the money to battle the development interest at some point, because at any point in time, development interest with a lot of money could come in and elect their own commission, which would thwart any vote we have made or any resolution that we made. So it is a political battle where the public has to stay engaged on the right side of this issue to make sure the working waterfront stays in place. And I don't see a resolution being a barrier to that because, quite frankly, somebody coming through with that kind of an agenda is going to have animus when they get here, and they're going to reverse more than just that. So it's a call to arms to make sure that we stay active in the political arena to make sure the right people get elected to keep the waterfront working, and less of what I view as a temporary fix. Unfortunately, that's how I view it as a resolution. So my take is I'm not in favor of it, but again, that doesn't mean we're not going to keep fighting for the outcome that we want to see, even when we're off this commission.
Yeah, and I don't necessarily see any distinct benefit to changing our current rules. I actually thought the process that we went through as a commission and working with our staff was really useful, and it was a really great dialogue that we had over numerous meetings to talk about this issue, revisit it, think about it from different angles. And it helped all of us. It certainly helped me learn and think deeply about the topic. And I think it informed our future planning just as much as a formal resolution would. So I'm going to ask that we continue with our current plans, but I do like this process of being able to think through questions from the Working Waterfront or any other group.
And with that answer from this commission, you can expect to see this again next year. Right, Jim? This is not a battle you're going to stop fighting, right?
You'll exploit it in different ways.
Yeah.
Okay. Great. All right. I'll switch to any remaining other business. Commissioner Briscoe, do you have any items?
I think I might have lost it in the thought process here. I did, no, nothing important.
Okay.
I think what I wanted to do was make sure that we spoke about Jim's question. I had that in mind as basically the only thing I wanted to talk about it.
Great.
And I would like to reiterate again, when it comes to the port stuff, I get pretty emotional. I'm pretty proud of our staff. I'm pretty proud of our community. They come and they bring these things forward and help us in these decisions. It's tough to sit at home at night and dream up things that can make better economy, like Steve's doing, thinking about the ecosystem tourism. I mean, it's these types of things that I've asked for a long time that our community comes forward and talks to us about, because it's things we need to do to better the economy and make this a better place to live, and that's our job. So I appreciate those things. And growing up here, I'm pretty attached, so I get pretty emotional. It seems like the older I get, the more it comes out. So.
Well, good. Thank you. Commissioner Bell?
Yeah, on that note, I'll piggyback on that a little bit, because imagine the environment that we've established, not only as a commission, but also the staff, where we have people like Steve coming. We have the Working Waterfront Coalition just partnering with us, and we have people comfortable bringing a circus to the waterfront. I mean, think of the dynamic that we've established where that kind of variety is welcome at the port and nobody feels rebuffed. So no idea is too ridiculous. No concept is one that we won't consider. So quite frankly, I'm really proud of that. And we also work on all the divisions. So we want to make sure that we keep our airport busy. We want to make sure we keep our shipping terminal busy. So yeah, I'm proud of that too. My report is pretty quick. I've got a legislative report because the WPPA was down in Olympia this week, and I wanted to let you know that we did have the opportunity to meet with some people. We met with Senator Rivers, Senator Shoemake, Representative Timmons, Representative Lincolnoff, and Representative Rule. Each one of those in an individual meeting, and then we happened to include Representative Rammel and Lovett for our dinner and had some amazing conversations around the topics that concern us. And just so you know what we discussed and had, let me put it, I can't tell you how good the people are that we met with. I went down there with very little expectation, and I came away from those meetings with those representatives blown away. and I'm not sure how Rob and Mike felt, but we have a quality group of people in Olympia working on our behalf. There were a couple of meetings that I was in awe of not only their level of knowledge, but also the amount of information they were willing to share and how on our page they really are. They're working for us down there, and so those legislative meetings were just phenomenal. Here's what we covered. We went through the cleanups. That was the easiest one because that's a given anymore. We went through broadband. Again, that's a given anymore. We talked about SEPA relief and how burdensome SEPA is on the process, and there is a bill coming through that will help shorten that. It doesn't necessarily apply to cleanups. It's going to apply for energy projects, but there is, at least it's on their radar screen now, that we need that SEPA relief for some of the environmental work that we're doing as well. We talked about the public records request and how burdensome that was, and that was very well received. And that meeting again was one where we felt not only a collaborative effort, but quite frankly, all of those people communicate with each other. They beat it around. They're going to go in as a force. When we ask for something, it's going to be done in one voice. So it was probably the best legislative meeting I've had, and it's too bad you guys couldn't have experienced that with me.
Well, I'm glad, because I've had some doubts, and it means a lot to me to hear you say that. It changes my attitude tremendously. So
seriously, I had zero expectations going in. But I walked out of there awestruck by the cooperation and the quality of people that we have in those offices.
It was our best Olympia trip yet, by far. It was a good trip.
Second thing is, I'm going to encourage everybody in the room, actually, because every Friday you can do this. I took a tour of the jail. There's another thing that exceeded my expectations. I thought the jail was...
Was that you weren't taken there, you went there.
It was a combination. I got early release. I thought the jail was bad, and I had an expectation that the jail was bad. But I walked out of that tour unable to believe that people could even work in that environment, let alone be housed and jailed in that environment. It was worse than I ever expected. I was claustrophobic within minutes of being in that space for the number of people and what they're trying to do with that space. So again, I'm encouraging, again, you can do this every Friday. There's a way to take a tour. I encourage you guys to go do it. Rob, I think anybody and everybody ought to be taking a tour of that jail. The last one is we had a meeting with the South Hill Neighborhood Association, and I was actually pleased with the way that went. I could have easily turned and gone south on this, but it really it was a good meeting, I think, with the South Hill Neighborhood about the noise that ABC presents when they load and unload their ships. So with the mitigation efforts that we have in place, I think the education component of that was strong. I thought the community relation part of that was strong. The social hour was really helpful because we got to know and they got to talk to us individually. So with that, it was really, really a good meeting. And then the last one is just a point of curiosity. Is ABC on their arrival date?
I don't believe we have it yet, but we do have a landing page on our website now for people to go to. You can sign up for notifications so that when we do update that, you will get an email or a text or whatever.
But still scheduled for sometime soon.
Next week or two.
Okay. It is the political season. You running? What are you gonna do?
Okay, I guess it's about time to answer the question because I've been asked and asked and asked, and people get tired of asking me. So
Yeah, I'm tired of asking you.
I will be seeking re-election for this seat this year. I don't feel that I'm quite done with the things that need to be done here, and I think that the continuity we have as a commission sets stability not only for our staff in the Port of Bellingham, but I believe it sets stability for Whatcom County. I think the port has been a leader through the pandemic and prior to that. And we've become a public agency that people will come and talk to, as we have in the audience. They come and talk to us and know they can do that. But they're not rebugged. Before I became a commissioner, there was some issues there. And I'd like to stay on and see if we can't do more than we've done. And I appreciate working with you, Jim.
I wish you well.
That it? Okay, well, I'm glad to hear that announcement. Thank you, Commissioner. I had only one. Rob, whose responsibility is it, ours or our tenants, to maintain water quality at the shipping terminal?
Where's Brian?
He's hiding back there, I saw him.
Thanks, Rob. And Commissioner Brian Gower, Director of Environmental and Planning Services. That's a kind of a broad question. I think there's a couple roles there. We have a number of permits for stormwater. That's the port's responsibility. Under the operations plan, though, with our tenants, they are then responsible for maintaining best management practices and all that, so that we can ensure that our water quality meets all the permit requirements. In the log pond area, that's a little different because that still is a port responsibility, but that whole area drains to the Area Stabilization Basin, ASB. So that's a little different. It actually doesn't discharge to the water at all. So it just kind of goes into the ASB and it evaporates. So there's a lot of different roles there depending on what's happening, but ultimately the permit drives water quality requirements, which is what Tamara reported on some of our exceedances that we had seen down there recently in the past quarter.
Okay.
Does that answer the question, or?
So we hold the permit, so it's ours that we have to upkeep it, but it's a partnership with us and our tenant to get there.
Exactly. And we then oversee things, making sure that the BMPs are being done correctly, and we try to encourage folks to, hey, that this is not not taking care of that, sweep up after that, or do whatever, and make sure that we're directing that. But yeah, and we have trainings. Everybody that operates down there has to go through certain training. So it's definitely a partnership, but ultimately it's port's responsibility.
All right. And with any new operation, sometimes it takes a little bit of time to get it all up to
working out all the
speed.
bugs.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, go ahead.
So are we back in compliance? Did we get things figured out, or what was going on?
Yeah, so
we had to report that we were out and we were working on it.
So there's exceedances, and then there's a process for each time that happens. So there's individual steps that go through. So we're addressing all of those, and then we'll continue to get more data as the rainy season occurs. And if we continue to have exceedances, then we'll have to step up and do more. And so there's a tiered approach. So currently we're in compliance with all the requirements there, but there's ongoing monitoring for that to make sure that that's maintained.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks, Brian. Okay. Anything else? Okay, we're done. One for a signature here.